It is.
I'd like to bring our school board meeting to order. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, it is good to see so many of you here, and I have a special appreciation as I see a number of Boy Scouts, and I am of your number. I forgot I was going to wear my Order of the Arrow badge, just my Order of the Arrow sash, just to flummox my colleagues here, but my heart is with you, and I'm delighted to see you take an interest in what makes our country possible. People like yourself and our citizens here who are concerned with government. And there's no government closer to the people than a school board. So, we are here in order, and I would, at this time, the floor is open for an approval of a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It has been moved that we approve the agenda. Are there any questions? Any discussion?
Need a second.
Hearing none.
Doesn't need one.
Never mind.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. The public this is a time for public comments on the agenda, and we have Ken. So, you know the routine, and so we ask for comments to be brief and dealing with matters of concern to the operation of our school board. Ken?
Actually, John, I just wanted to talk to the public hearing. I wrote down on there the public hearing.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
So we will move on then to board comments.
You'd like me to go first, right?
Well, you are quick on the nonverbal uptake.
Okay. I don't have very much to report since the last time we met, other than I missed the January 10th event at the middle school, the new middle school, because I was out of town. However, I did get to go to the middle school the morning they opened it for the kids, and I was there. And of course, I had a Builders Club meeting, which was why I was there. And I went to get donuts for the Builders Club kids, although the kitchen had figured there wasn't going to be any. So there weren't any donuts, but we had some other things there. Nevertheless, the kids didn't show up for the Builders Club meeting. They were way too excited to see the building. There were actually 3 kids showed up. We had more adults there than there were kids, including the superintendent. In any event, I totally understood that. We were ready for not to have a meeting. But that was really great because I got to also see the new building as the kids were experiencing it, and I stayed for their assembly to have their first introduction to the building, that sort of thing. And that was fun, and that's really the only thing I need to report at this point. So,
Laura?
Well, I've been involved in the Reading Buddies program at Sandhill, which is really, really fun. They bring in students one-on-one, and we listen to them read. And often we'll hear stories about lots of other parts of their lives too, like what they got for Christmas and all of those kinds of things. But it's really fun, and it's very, very rewarding, and they're actually very good readers. So these are typically students who just need a little one-on-one for a little help with their reading, but I didn't have to help anybody. They're just, they're great kids. It's really fun and very rewarding. And I also went to the open house at the middle school, and my children all graduated from that as a high school. And to see it the way it is now is just amazing. And I wanted to schedule a time to bring my children back, who are now adults, so that they can see how gorgeous it is and what a great facility it is. So thank you to Ray Mao.
Yes, indeed. And he was there too.
He was.
Good. I wasn't January 10th. This is my end of my 3rd week, and I'm not sick anymore, but if you can stay away from the flu, I recommend it. So that's been a big thing, and we set some new hours at the Port of Dewato. I'm the director for the Port of Dewato, for you that don't know. And we've got actual hours to our building now that they've never had before. So 4 days a week in the middle of the woods alone. So it'll be interesting. That's what I've been doing.
Oh, well, I guess there's me in order of. This has been a busy time because I've been elected to be a board delegate, and this is something other than be interesting for you folks interested in government. As a legislative representative elected by my colleagues, I pay attention to what's going on in the state legislature and inform my colleagues of things that are coming up of interest to education. And then one day a year, all our colleagues or representatives of school boards from throughout the state, and school boards are the most numerous elected office in the state, we all descend on Olympia to talk to our legislators about the importance of education and the importance of supporting a variety of bills that are on the WASDA, which is the Washington State School Directors Association list for what are our most important priorities and others. This other position, legislative delegate, and I'm one of a few that set the WASDA legislative agenda for the state. We don't just pull it out of thin air, but we review the positions that WASDA has, and we urge school boards to send us new proposals for legislation, as has sometimes been done. And we then sort of vet these for suitability to be included in the agenda, and we have a large meeting in September of various school board representatives where we spend the whole day voting. Green card if you're for, red card if you're against, yellow card if you want some information. So I would just recommend to those of you who are scouts and interested in government that you get on the website and you Google WASDA and you look at various of our legislative priorities, and maybe you would inspire yourself or your parent, particularly if you're 18, or your parents to show up at the legislature or contact your legislator on items of interest to you as one representing the future of education.
My month has been kind of busy with things for TOLO and senior class stuff, but I'm especially excited about TOLO because I'm finally finishing it up and we have a month to go. And then I'm also excited because the high school is having the drama department is having a talent show next week. It's supposed to be today, but now it's next week, and I'm very excited for that.
What day next week is it?
Thursday.
Next Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
What are you gonna do?
I'll just watch. I'm not performing.
Come on.
What time is it, Megan?
I do not know.
They changed the time and date. I believe it's at 6 p.m., but we'll have to look at the high school.
Is it in our event calendar?
Well, it just got changed. It was originally tonight. So it is on the high school website. So we'll have Denise look it up and send it out to you all in case you want to go.
And what's TOLO?
It is the winter ball Sadie Hawkins dance, Girls Ask Guys, and it's the less formal dance, but it's also a senior class fundraiser.
All right. I trust you will be attending.
Yes.
How much does it? Sorry.
Go. Yes?
How much does it cost now?
TOLO, it's $10 a ticket.
Oh, that's cool. Good. Okay.
I failed to Art's note to me, our colleague Dinah is excused for today. She's been sick, and we understand such things.
And also the same for Grace Collins.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
All right, so we have two people that are out sick, and we wish them well. Now, we've come at that part of our meeting where we have the consent agenda. This agenda enables the board to efficiently deal with matters that have been delegated to the superintendent, but by law must be approved by the board. These are items on the consent agenda are voted upon as one block and approved with one vote. An item may be removed from the agenda only upon approval of the majority of the board. And the administration recommends that the board of directors approve the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I have a small little thing in the new social media where it says age a level appropriateness of material. Could that just be age level appropriate material? And then there's a comma missing, so I was just going to point those out, but it's so small that like it's something I can do later.
You should have a motion on the floor first.
But the
You have to have a motion.
appropriateness,
We have
I
to have a
thought-
motion first.
Yeah, we
Oh.
have to have,
Then we can discuss.
I should have pointed that out, and, we can, even your comment, I suppose, is sufficient, since it is not a substantive issue, but
Okay.
Well, I will move that we approve the consent agenda.
Oh,
all right, is there any discussion?
Now would be the proper
Now's my
time for bringing
discussion.
that up.
Yeah,
Great.
so now you presented your,
okay. That was all I had. It was just the appropriateness of material. It sounded to me, it was like, I mean, it's so little and it's not really a big deal.
Which was the?
Well,
item?
It's social media, the first paragraph, where it reads, the new opportunities also pose many new challenges, including, but not limited to, access for all students, age level appropriateness of material, and security.
So the reason it says age level appropriateness is a challenge is the age level appropriateness of the material. Challenge isn't that we have age level appropriate
okay. I
material.
get it.
It's whether the material that's being accessed is appropriate. So it is actually grammatically correct, although it feels weighty or unwieldy.
But now that you said it in a different way than I was reading it, and then that was it. And there was a comma missing at the very last sentence, but
Okay,
after efficient.
okay, we
That was
can
it.
get that in there. And that's another one. They've changed the rule now in the
They
you
did,
can have
but-
the comma or not, but so we can
Right.
do that.
So and then you would, if you did it up in the prior,
Then you
would
should do it there.
later. I know, and I used to do nuclear documents, the editing. So when I noticed it,
No, that's
but-
great. We can add a comma.
okay. But it's wonderful, and I really like it. So
We have, we're in developing a really outstanding procedure to follow this up that is actually in the form of an online flyer. So that does a really good job of describing what is personal use of social media, what is work-related use for employees, what is this learning-related use for students, and where the lines are drawn. So it will really help people be able to use all the tools available to them, but in an appropriate way. And if things happen that aren't appropriate, having it so clearly delineated will help us deal with issues in a way that's fair and quick and efficient. So thank you.
okay, are there any other items that anyone would like to bring to the fore?
There were several. Unfortunately, somehow I have blown it and managed to destroy what's on the screen here, so I can't access any of it.
May I,
Thanks.
destroy it.
of course, I realize I shouldn't encourage you, but
You shouldn't, right? I had a couple just questions more. I just wanted to see if maybe you would describe a little bit more about, in particularly the Girls Who Code Club proposal. There was very little bare
Yeah.
bones in that.
Yeah, that's very exciting. So Girls Who Code is a national initiative, and there is a local group out of Kitsap County that has been building and growing. So our Brooke, our teacher at the high school who's taking the lead, who's our instructional technology coach, is going to be supporting a Girls Who Code club at our high school. And so it's learning computer science skills, and it's specifically targeted at girls because of the gap between girls who enter professions related to science and technology and boys, given the number of each that are distributed in the total population.
Very cool.
Okay. Let's see, I also had wanted to, could you, what is this, the Vocal Vision OT contract? What happened, as I read, it says that replaces a current employee on leave. So is,
The current occupational therapist that is employed by the district is on a long-term leave for health reasons. And we have a contract with VocoVision, which is a provider for remote services with someone who does OT services via Skype and then comes in when necessary. So she helps the assistant. We have occupational therapist assistants who work directly with kids. So she oversees them, but also works with them and the kids via technology, but not here in our site. And that's really a great opportunity because people who do those positions are getting harder and harder for districts to find and to hire, and also harder and harder for districts who are rural to find and to hire, because it is not a lot of people in the field, and not a lot of people in the field who want to live places other than larger cities. So the opportunity to provide the services via technology ensures that we can still do the right things for our kids and give them this therapy that they need, even though that person doesn't live anywhere nearby. So.
okay, that helps me understand it. I have to admit that I live in the 20th century because I sort of saw Vocal Vision. I kept thinking this was something to do with vision and eyes, as opposed to, it really was referring to online content.
Yeah, it's just the company
Yeah.
name.
But I didn't get that from reading all that stuff.
Okay.
Part of it was my problem. There was another one. I just need to figure out where it is. Oh, yes, if you could speak to the policy 3115, homeless students, enrollment, rights, and service, and also the next one, 3140, release of resident students. I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure I understand all of what that was all about.
Well, there's some changes in language according to our CWs that came in effect during the last legislative session that the rulemakers just finished putting together for school districts that give us the changes in homeless education. And that's really to ensure that we have the right language in our policies about ensuring equal access to free and appropriate public education to kids, whether they have a place that is their own address to call home or not. And and that we take as a district reasonable steps to ensure that they're not segregated or treated any differently than any other students. So the big change on that policy is the requirement that we will have a liaison to work with families and kids in that situation. And so that's the change that we made there, as far as not just language, but what really is happening. And then the big change on the release of resident students is a really, I think, a positive one. It's an added section D that says the purpose of transfer is for a student to enroll in an online or an online school or an online course. Prior to making this change and throughout the state, a student who wanted to do like an online school program was in kind of a limbo that nobody else was, where you might transfer, where they were transferring to do their education at an online school somewhere. They were still considered a North Mason student, so they weren't fully our student and they weren't fully a student in the other place. We weren't getting any funding, but the other place didn't have some requirements that they had to, both people weren't fully meeting the student's need. Now they're actually allowed to be called a transfer student to wherever that school is or whatever it is called. And that transfer is something that's happening in the cloud rather than physically.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me, so thanks.
Yeah.
I started thinking it had to do with somebody who lived in another district one getting here and then going to yet a third district is kind of how it read to me. But
Yeah.
thanks for the clarification. I have no other comments or questions.
Okay. So this brings us to item 3.
We have to vote.
You have to vote.
Oh, well, of course. Such a formality of democratic governance.
Right.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as we've discussed it and as it's been presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, approved. So now we are on to item 3.
Okay, item 3 is School Board Recognition Month. While I'm talking, Denise, do you want to cue up that video? So I will read you the proclamation from Governor Jay Inslee. Whereas the mission of Washington's public school system is to assure that all students achieve at high levels and possess the knowledge and skills to be responsible students and enjoy productive and satisfying lives, and whereas Washington's 295 locally elected school boards and 9 elected educational service districts are the core of the public education governance system in our state, and whereas the districts and regions they lead serve more than 1 million students, have a combined budget of more than $11 billion, and employ 160,000 people, and whereas school directors play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards of accountability for all involved, and whereas school directors are directly accountable to the citizens in their district and regions, serving a vital link between members of the community and their schools, and whereas school directors and educational service districts provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of school children, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize school directors as outstanding volunteers and champions for public education, now therefore I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim January as School Board Recognition Month in Washington, and he urges all people in our state to join in this special observance, signed this 21st day of December 2016. And each of you will receive a beautiful School Board Recognition certificate. And thank you so much for your work. As you can see, folks, around the room we have some thank yous and artwork from students that at each of the directors' seats they have a number of individual thank yous from students from all of our districts. And before you all leave, there is a special envelope for you attached to the thank you from the high school leadership group. And a group of students at Belfair made you a little video, and we wanted to show you the song that they put together for you. So now we're ready.
Policy makers, curriculum reshapers, motivations grade school board. They provide us with supplies, make sure there's no surprises. For kids all shapes and sizes, North Mason's grade school board. Do-do-do-do, school board. Do-do-do-do, school board. Do-do-do-do, 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 school board. They keep us stocked in teachers, they cheer us in the bleachers. They're really marvelous creatures. North Mason's grade school board.
With Adam Family.
Thank you for the many things you all do to keep us safe in England. North Mason's grade school board. North Mason's grade school board. Do-do-do-do. School board.
That was great.
That's cute. Good job.
Well, who says this is a thankless task? There you go. That was just wonderful. And I'm particularly pleased that it's done on a film, something that would never have happened. You know, when I was in school, such stuff.
And
was
you're
not-
using computers to move
Yeah.
along. That was great.
All right, we're now on to item 4, the issuance of limited general obligation bonds. Now, Dana, you might want to explain
Yeah.
where we are on this.
Okay, yes. As we're nearing the end of the projects related to our 2013 bond, we have completed outstanding facilities so far for our students and community. However, the non-high payments from Grapeview School District are spread out over the term of a levy and were not available up front, as they would have been were those received via a bond election in Grapeview, and then received all at once. Also, since we began the high school project, construction costs in the Puget Sound region, and specifically related to us and our region, have risen by about 23%. This increase is larger than was anticipated in developing the bond, and as a result, additional funds are needed to complete the remaining planned projects. So I am going to recommend that we elect to take on non-voted obligation to provide these needed funds. This would not increase taxes for the residents in our community. It would increase our responsibility to pay back from the funds that we receive to manage the district. So at this time, we have placed legal ads in local newspapers to inform the community that we are going to have a public hearing to this effect. At this time, what we would ask that we would do would be to adjourn to a public hearing. We have a presenter, Ryan Swanson from Piper Jaffray, who will help Kathy present what we think we need to get done, and then we would be able to have public comment in response to that.
All right. Well, in keeping with what Dana has just said, I would like to open our public hearing on the proposed issuance by the district of its limited general obligations bonds, and I welcome our presenters to come forward and explain what they have in view.
Thank you very much. If I can remember high school drama, I will project, so if anybody can't hear me, let me know. I will go to the microphone, but hopefully I can fill this room with my voice. Hello, my name is Ryan Swanson. I am from Piper Jaffray. My compatriot Trevor Carlson would normally be with you this evening, but he is caught the bug, and thankfully he is not sharing it with anybody here. So thank you for allowing me to present. As Dennis has said, I am here to talk about borrowing of non-voted funds for the payment of the stadium. I believe Denise gave a packet to everyone, so you should have a hard copy, but we'll also flip through it as well. I'll try and be brief, but if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me as I go through. Hey, look at that. The very first thing you do whenever you're going to incur a loan is you make sure you have the legal capacity to do it. And that's primarily what this first slide covers. The two boxes I'll draw your attention to are on the right-hand side. The top box is how we would calculate the total capacity of the district to borrow debt. That includes both your voted and your non-voted debt. It's a fairly simple calculation. You take the assessed value of the property within the community, you multiply that by 5%. That gives you your total borrowing capacity. As you can see by those numbers, you have a capacity of about 102 million in a round number. You subtract out your existing voted debt, which is 45,935,000. You subtract out your existing non-voted debt, 4.4 million roughly, and that leaves how much capacity you have left for total debt, so 51 million. A subset calculation for that is your non-voted. Because you are not going to go to the citizens and ask their permission to incur this debt, it's a much stricter threshold. So that calculation is you take the same assessed value number and you multiply it by 3/8 of 1%, and that math works out to about 7.6 million. You subtract out the non-voted debt you've already incurred, which hopefully matches the top table, and it does. And that actually, I should be clear, that 4,395,253 number that I have included there includes all your outstanding plus this potential issue. Excuse me. So after this non-voted obligation, there would still be 3.2 million in capacity left. But the main question is answered. You do have the legal authority to pursue this option.
I have just a brief question just to clear up for myself. The non-voted debt is essentially a loan that we take out from somewhere.
Exactly. That is exactly it.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, I like that. That's a good question. On page 2, for your reference, just a quick summary of the debt that is outstanding in case you had not been alerted to it recently. There are 3 non-voted issues that are out there. The first one will be fully retired in June of this year. The 2010 issue will be gone by 2020, the 2011 by 2021, and you probably well remember the voted issue that was implemented in 2013. That will be out a little bit longer. At the bottom of that slide, there's a reference to a Moody's rating. When you went out for your voted bonds, you went to a credit rating agency to When you're selling a loan to a potential investor, if you can have a third party give an evaluation of what your credit worthiness is, think of it just like an S&P score or a credit report score, that can help the investor evaluate what sort of rate they want to negotiate when you borrow the funds. Your voted rating is currently A1, which is a very strong rating. There's AAA would be the strongest perfect bond you could issue. Category below that is AA, and it has 3 layers of AA 1, 2, and 3. And then there's the single A category, and so A1 would be the highest level of that A category. It's a great rating. Think of it if you were coming home from school with your report card and you brought home basically like a B+ on the national average. That'd be good stuff. There are very, very few entities that have a AAA. In the state of Washington, I think there's less than 10. So A1, excellent rating. I'll go ahead and say this right now too. Moody's has in the last year changed their policy. Traditionally, voted debt has usually been about a notch higher than non-voted debt. So historically, we would assume that the district would receive an A2 rating, just one notch lower, slightly higher interest borrowing cost. Moody's has changed their methodology. They don't see there is much difference between those two types of debt. So when we pursue this with the agency, we will be asking for the same A1 rating. Now, of course, it is a different credit. You're adding more debt burden to the district. It is completely within their prerogative to assign any rating they feel is appropriate, but we do feel you have a strong case to make the A1 and have a similar.
So another, hopefully just really simple question is, from a practical point of view, from where we're coming from, that rating that we get defines to a large extent the interest we're going to pay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If you remember back prior to the Great Recession, there were a whole bunch of subprime loans that were packaged up, and they were all given AAA ratings because they were insured. Well, investors were relying on that insured rating, that AAA, and they weren't doing their due diligence. Since that time, as we've seen, many of those loans were not AAA category. Investors have paid much more attention to the underlying rating, or the actual rating for the issuer or the entity that is applying for the loan, and that is absolutely why that underlying rating of A1 or A2, if it did work out to be that way, would be so important for the district's borrowing cost. It's worth going through the effort, and your administration is preparing for that conversation.
So another related question then is the rating is assigned by Moody's in this case, but it can be other organizations that make those ratings. Are there things that the school district could do to cause Moody's to change? I'm thinking about upwards.
Upwards, absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't particularly think this is the most fair way to value or rate someone's credit, but general fund balance. If you prove that you have essentially a healthy reserve, any credit rating agency will look upon that favorably. Unfortunately, what rating agency sees as a healthy reserve does not necessarily always coincide well or jive well with what an issuer or a district has to actually use to implement the programs that you want to put forth. In Washington, though, we are lucky simply because of the tax system that we have, like with voted bonds. Because the district doesn't actually touch the money, you submit how much you want to collect from the voters to the assessor's office. They calculate the rate, hand that over to the treasurer, and the treasurer collects the taxes. The district doesn't actually get the money. You would then direct the treasurer to pay the bills on your behalf. Moody's and S&P, to a lesser extent, another rating agency, look favorably upon our taxation system. So the A1 rating, again, absolutely fundamental. It will help with the overall borrowing cost and lower it. Did I answer the question clearly?
Yes,
Okay.
clearly
Follow-up?
enough. Plus you gave me some more.
Okay, I have a bad tendency of doing that, so if I talk too much, this is what I do every day. I kind of get into it, so if you need me to slow down or do less, just let me know. Moving on.
I had one question just on this myself.
Sure.
Just looking at this, I think I catch the difference, but just looking at your first page overview of bonds and capital levies, if you just look at this, well, after the thing, how much damage is a lay question when you're, getting money or borrowing money or, buying a car or something. Okay, so on this one, if it was on the top one, were it a voted debt, we would have the remaining capacity of $51.5 million. Now, this other one says we would have a capacity of just 3 million. I take it that is for if we wanted to go for another non-limited obligation bond, or is that, okay, so it doesn't have anything to do with our total
Nope.
capacity?
It does in that it's a subset of the total.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then it's a more strict guideline, because you obviously would want to have any major project like the bond that you did in 13, to borrow $43 million plus without asking your citizens
Yeah, right.
to back that,
No.
that would not be a very good way to run an entity. So this is just simply a subset that allows you, for in times of need, to be able to make those decisions without going to a vote of the people.
Yeah, that's important. It helps one frame it as more a housekeeping issue rather than a major project
Right.
that would, of course, require public approval.
Absolutely, well said. I will skip forward a couple slides. As with any borrowing, you're probably interested in what borrowing costs have been doing. In my tenure, believe it or not, I've been doing this almost 20 years now. Interest rates have essentially gone down my entire career. I keep saying they're gonna go back up, and I keep being wrong. Even with the results of the most recent presidential election, where we saw an increase, a quick increase in borrowing costs across the country, that has leveled off, and we actually saw those rates drop again over the last few weeks. So since the presidential election, rates have been relatively flat. As you can see in my graph, they're the small boxed area. Basically, from that high peak is about 2 weeks after the presidential election, and since then, it's essentially gone down. As with anything, markets react to commentary. Ms. Yellen, our secretary, or the Fed chairman, spoke today. Her words regarding that the Fed considers it a good year to raise rates, the economy is strong, markets reacted poorly, so rates went up. So between now and when you issue the debt, just as if you were going to lock in a financing on a house, you can't lock rates on a bond, a house too, you have to sort of wait a time period. Rates are going to go up and down, but historically, we are still at an excellent time to borrow funds. That's essentially what the take on this.
If I understand that last part of the comment, rates will go up and down. If we were to vote for doing this sort of a thing, we're not going to get a fixed rate?
No, I'm sorry, I apologize. You will get a fixed rate.
We will get a fixed rate.
Once the loan is set in place and an
okay.
agreement has been reached with investors, it is fixed. It is a
Okay,
fixed
so
rate.
we're not going to have a variable rate once and if we decide to do something like that. Okay, thanks.
Correct, correct.
And I trust you're skilled at picking just the right day.
Of course. No, I can't make that kind of a promise, as you're probably well aware. It's that, if I had a crystal ball, I would have retired young. On to the next slide, some basics about the bonds themselves. We are targeting a closing date, which would be the date that the funds would actually be transferred to the district, of March 15th of this year. Our goal is to deposit $4 million into the Capital Projects Fund to proceed with the projects themselves. Currently, our estimated cost of issuance for both my firm and all the other entities that will be involved in helping the bonds come to fruition would be approximately $65,000. One request that has been made is there is the possibility that the district would be able to repay this debt on a faster timeline should revenues come in. So we're going to try and negotiate what is called a 5-year call option, which would mean that the whole term of this loan is going to be 15 years. But if possible, we would retain the right to put those bonds or call those bonds back in after 5 years' time. And nutshell version, essentially, after 5 years has gone by, if you want to, you can give the investors the remaining principal amount back and no longer pay any interest. Industry standard is 10 years, but as many investors are thinking that interest rates are rising, they are less leery of having you take the bonds back in. If anything, if rates do go up, they would actually be thankful if you paid the bonds off in 5 years because they could reinvest at a higher rate. So we don't foresee that 5-year call being a difficulty at this time. Ran some numbers over the last couple of days. We've talked to our underwriters, and we're currently projecting about a 3.39% borrowing cost for the 15-year term loan, including that 5-year call date. Total principal and interest, so if there's $4 million in principal, then interest would be approximately $1,150,000, just so you have a full number. And what's probably most important is on average, that works out to about $350,000 a year in payments for the life of the loan. And that would be every year annually. that you would make that much of a payment. And of course, the 15-year term of final maturity would be on December 1st, 2031.
Unless we did that 5-year call.
Exactly, and the 5-year call gives you optionality. If you do have revenues come in and you are able to pay it off, that would be wonderful, because once the bonds are returned to the investors, the principal, then there would be no interest associated with it. Going to a par call anytime, so let's say like 2 days from now, or 2 days after you get the loan, the money comes in, investors would charge a very, usually high penalty if you wanted to immediately call the bonds, because they've gone through all the effort to make this investment. They want some guarantee that they're going to be able to see a return for a period of time. This slide, I will not go into too much detail. It is, again, going back into the rating, it's some of the factors that the rating agency will go into regarding the bonds. I will leave that for you at a later time, or if you have any questions about it at the end of the presentation, feel free to approach me or ask Dana to reach out to Trevor and myself. But again, credit rating is very important. When you were reviewed by Moody's in 2013, we included some of the current strengths and concerns for you to reference, so that might address your question from earlier a little bit better. And lastly, last slide, the proposed schedule of events. As you can see, tonight is the night for action regarding the resolution that would authorize us to pursue this loan obligation. We are currently working on an offering document. It's called a preliminary official statement with Dana and Kathy's help. We're going to have that document ready and put that out to potential investors on February 21st. We're targeting a pricing date, which would be the day that we would actually go out and ask investors for their bids or their offers on the loan, and then wrap that up and have the bond closed by March 15th.
I had one question on the previous page on the bond rating. Could you explain what's the distinction, the significance of the district's underlying rating, A1, and the state guarantee, capital A, lowercase a1?
I can, definitely. So the underlying rating is the rating on the credit quality of the district standalone, as the district itself. The state offers a program called the Washington State School Bond Guarantee Program, which we utilized with the voted issue, and I probably should have talked to Trevor about that. Non-voted issues are not allowed to participate in that program. The idea being that the state will back it if the voters have expressed their consent. But when you do a voted issue and you qualify the school bond guarantee, no district except for one has ever been denied if it's a voted issue, then the state stands behind you. So if for some reason an entity a school district could not fulfill its payment obligations on time, the state would step in, make the investors whole, and then would negotiate with the district to refer the payment.
Okay. And it ties back into the previous question that I asked about the two kinds of debt.
Perfect.
Well, I have a question. In your introduction, you mentioned that Grapeview School District has a levy that's their part of our capital project, spread out over 4 years. So we're not collecting on that except once a year.
We're
is that-
collecting twice a year.
Okay.
Our last payment is in 2019. And because of that, you know, if it had been a bond like they originally tried to get, we would have had the upfront payment. And so by having those smaller payments twice a year, it has a really tightening impact on our cash flow as we're now nearing the end of the project, and really making it hard to ensure that we have the appropriate cash flow in the bond.
So that is one of the reasons why we need to do this.
That, together with the increasing costs that have
Construction
impacted how much money we actually have left.
Okay. So the payments that we make on this proposed issuance or bond, that would come from our general fund?
It will come from our general fund, the Grapeview money, yeah, together.
Thank you very much. Are there any final questions?
Oh, Ken, you wanted, this is an opportunity.
Can the public ask questions?
Absolutely. I mean, this is just the time for it, Ken.
Well, yeah, I should have questioned earlier when you were going through the screen, when you started the presentation, Mr. Swanson, you said that this was for the stadium?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, that's the major project that is left to complete, Ken.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I wasn't quite certain where that came from, so thank you, but I wanted to ask another question here on page 2. There's a LGO 2005 for $1 million. Is that a non-voting obligation?
It was, yes. LGO is short for limited general obligation bond, and the difference is when the voters get permission for an issue, it's unlimited, and that doesn't mean a blank check. It doesn't mean you can ask any amount of money that you want. What it means is that once the loan is established, the tax rate can go up to an unlimited amount to be able to make those debt service payments up to exactly those debt service payments. With a limited general obligation, you do not have a tax backing it, so there is a limited amount of borrowing.
I was on the board at the time, and I'm curious, Art, do you remember what that,
I can speak to that.
or what it was?
Yes, yes, Kathy.
That was actually in 2005, and I wasn't here at the time, but there was a changeover in the transportation department, and they had to do a non-voted debt to get a bunch of school buses. So
Okay.
we have one more payment left, and we'll be done.
I remember now, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Those are all questions.
Okay, is there any other member of the community that would like to make a comment? We certainly urge you to do so. What,
Ken did want to have a,
Ken? Was there?
Well, yeah, I wanted to.
Speak to.
Questioning is all I'd
Sure,
like to
go
make.
right ahead. This is an opportunity to welcome comments.
So it's time for the public comment, okay? Great. Thank you for this opportunity. I saw this on the agenda last week, or earlier this week, I guess, and called and talked to the superintendent, and I didn't understand that it was for the stadium. I was concerned with the money that was being spent down at Feller on remodeling the building, and I wanted to find out if that's what it was being used for. And she assured me that it wasn't. It was the ESD is taking care of that, and you know, that's great. Yesterday I went over to the sale at the Hawkins School that's being demolished, and I went to buy some things, and I noticed that the ESD had already claimed them, and they're going to put them in the Feller building. I think that's awesome, but I understand that they're tearing down the building and they're going to put a parking lot there. Has that already been
That,
paid for?
that money is encumbered already, so that, yeah.
Okay. So this isn't.
This is
part of
beyond that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was just from reading through those supporting documents, and I can't remember what page it was on, but it says that these non-voted bonds can't be used for new construction, has quotation around new.
I saw that too.
But isn't the stadium a new construction?
We've had our legal counsel look through this project and make sure that we can
Okay, well, that's just.
issue the,
It's
yeah.
not so much of a question as a comment that I'm surprised, well, it's just something that should have been noted for the public to comment on, so. And I found out yesterday as well that the old central kitchen facility is being torn down, and that's where the stadium is gonna go.
is projected, yes.
Yeah, and, you know, I think these are the kinds of things, it's important to clarify to the community at large, specifically where these non-voted funds are going for, because when it just, you can't tell for certain. I was curious if these could be used to repair that 4-year-old breach in the dike. It's not a new thing, but it's something that the school is obligated to do. So I like the idea of a 5-year callback. I think that's great. but I have some concerns with the bond rating. From what I saw there, one of the things is local economy factors and infrastructure. And I think you all know what kind of status the sewer system's in and what kind of status the transportation system is in. So those might be some things that need to be negotiated with the folks that give these bond ratings. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you.
Well, now that Ken mentioned that, could you say something about the quotation in the new? Is the idea that this is really part of some construction that was going on before?
Well, it is a new building, but
Uh-huh.
it is part of the project that was planned as our overarching bond project.
I get
Yeah.
that logic then.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's important because we're often asked to explain things, as Ken well pointed out, and I think that was kind of what I thought, but it's important we are straight on that so we can communicate good information and not add to any problems. Okay,
We're still in the.
we're
public
still in
hearing.
the public hearing
Anyone else?
mode. Is there anyone else that would like to participate? All right, hearing none, I will then declare the public hearing part of our meeting closed. Now, if I understand our agenda, we are open for resolution whether or not to proceed with the proposal that has been set before us. So, I would welcome at this time, to get the discussion going, a motion to, one way or another, on the proposal before us.
I move that we approve Resolution 01G17, issuance by the district of its limited general obligation bonds.
Okay? Discussion?
Yeah, this would then be the non-voted debt, I guess you call it. And for, what is that amount?
$4 million.
$4 million. My big question is, it's for you and for Kathy. I'm assuming, but that's why I want to ask, that you've figured this stuff out, and can we afford this over the time frame from our general fund?
Yeah, we took a really good look at it, and that's part of why we employ somebody like Trevor and Ryan to help us figure that out, because they do this all the time. But yes, we did. A big portion of the payments will come from our Grapeview payments. So, we'll either pay them directly as we receive them or bank those for the next payment. So about almost half of it will come from that, and the rest will come from the general fund over time. So yes, we can.
Right, so as I see it then, as you say, almost half will come from the Grapeview funds. The hit is really only going to be on the operational, the general fund, are going to be half as much as it could seem like. Okay, that's better.
I'm very interested in the 5-year call for the redemption. We would be saving a lot of interest if we could manage that. So that would be a real interest.
And that is what Kathy and I would really work towards and hope that we can achieve between what we currently know about our finances and what might improve through the current legislative session as well.
Now, go ahead, Mark.
I'm seeing that were we to do this, that in effect, this is the kind of thing that I hear from, well, community folks otherwise. We'll be tightening our belt a bit to do this, but I see that as a good thing. It's always better to be lean than to be not lean in budget and stuff like that. So this would be could be a very good exercise in us learning how to do that better than we've been doing. And it's not like we've been doing a poor job of that.
No.
So that's just a picture that I'm seeing. I don't know if that works for how you're seeing it too, but I see that it's a belt tightening, and we'll have to do that. And I've always been good at tightening my belt. So, all right, thanks.
So what I wanted to, this is sort of a follow-on to Art's. One of the things I've admired, the many things for which I admire Kathy, is we have been able in this district to have a kind of reserve in our funds, and indeed our board has set a certain amount below which we do not want to go. And I remember from my time of being on the board with David Peterson, when the legislature pulled out from us money that had already been granted, sending us into a really difficult situation. I guess this is directly toward Kathy. So how will our prudence for difficult times fare under this regime? Will it disappear under belt tightening, or will we be able to do it and yet maintain our appearance and fact of having something in reserve?
I have dreamt about this. Of course, nobody wants to take non-voted debt, either personal or business. We have been doing very well, keeping our fund balance at a good level. And I think, I know that the legislature is going to come through and give us more money. So I think that we're ahead in that regard. And I think that we can maintain where we are right now. We might not be able to keep growing our fund balance, but we have been able to get our board balance up to about $970,000. That's our minimum requirement. And we ended last year with the fund balance of $1.7 million. So even if we were to get no extra money from the school board this year, or I'm sorry, from the state, from the legislature, we would still maintain where we have been for the past several years without going any lower than that. So at worst case, we would just stay where we are, but the superintendent and I have talked about it over and over, and really see nothing but more money coming in from the state. We're fine with our levy. I think it'll be okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's sort of the direction of my own thinking. If in the worst case, I would be loath to do something that would change our overall posture, because along with my colleagues, particularly when it comes with public money, I think that we ought to be lean and not do something that is risky. And I understand the risks of life. The legislature could pull some unexpected thing again. But given that and all the discussions I've been part of on money in the schools, I certainly agree that things look better. Then it would be imprudent now, rash, not to assume that we were going to have more funds. So I don't see an objection consonant with our policy, in which our superintendent has been very good in not giving away the store on salaries and this kind of thing, as have other districts. I think that's been very important, that we stay but not only within our means, but do so in a way that gives us a certain margin should things change. And certainly under David, we remember we didn't really have to riff, a single teacher in that, precisely because of this. And we have an obligation not only to the public, but I think we have also an obligation to our professional staff who are working, to improve themselves all the time. I think that this looks good for all the relevant, constituencies. So I appreciate that.
I do have a question for you, Ryan. The interest cost here, 3.39, is based on the Moody's A1 rating. Is that correct?
Actually, we were conservative when we did these projections because we would always like to over-deliver. We assumed the rates that would be equivalent to an A2 rating, which would be the traditional rating we would expect from Moody's. So if Moody's does come through and provides an A1, we would hope to see an improvement on that borrowing cost. Likewise, If rates go down between now and then, it would improve. If rates go up, it would be higher.
Okay.
So this is, at this moment in time, we believe it's a conservative estimate of where the bonds would price in the current market.
But it could improve.
It could improve.
So this was based on 2013 by
No, it's based on
Moody's.
today's rates, but utilizing an A2 underlying rating.
I see.
Because traditionally Moody's would, if you had a voted bond rating of A1, they would give you a one-notch lower rating of A2 for non-voted debt. But in the last, actually it was in the last 8 months, Moody's has changed their internal protocol for how they assign the ratings to non-voted debt. We have not seen an issuer in Washington go out for non-voter debt and receive that benefit yet. We've had districts in Oregon, which this actually, they do more non-voted debt than they do here in general. They've actually seen it come through. And I know what's happened in other states as well after talking with Moody's analysts.
So maybe you could influence them.
We
Okay.
are an advocate for every district that we work with.
Okay.
And we like to point out the positives. We of course disclose the negatives, but we definitely like to point out the positives, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
You answered my question.
I have another question, just if you don't mind, Superintendent Rosenbach, can you give us just a really brief overview of the alternatives and how you decided that this would be the right thing for us to do?
Well, as I said, costs have gone up, and primarily related to the projects that are left to complete. As you know, when we did the bond, we had some major projects that were called out in the bond language and some minor projects. The major projects were a new high school and the renovations of the existing high school to create a new Hawkins. And it also development of a new home for the alternative school, which is now James Taylor, and in that was also moving the district office. And part of the description that was shared throughout the community and the discussions over time with a new high school included that for North Mason, a high school is not complete without the athletic facilities, which would include a new stadium. So when the planning for how we would roll things out was done, that was a little bit just before I got here. So there was some planning done. There were some smaller projects in there as well, projects that would benefit the elementary schools, new roof, and some play fields, some security improvements, those kinds of things. Typically what happens and the way the language was written, those would be the kind of things that could in many districts be, and if we have money, we'll get those things done. So it was very important to the district leadership and the school board that there wasn't a building that was left out of benefiting from the bond that the community approved. So we determined that we would go up front on some of those other projects and kind of hold the stadium to the end. What that did was, as costs started going up immediately, since the bond was approved, many of those projects came in bids a little bit differently than we expected them to. Once we accepted the bid, I want to be really clear that they came in as we expected them to, but between writing the bond and getting the bids, there was difference in each of those. So our costs were higher than we anticipated. But what we did was we did complete new play sheds at both elementary schools, moving and improving parking at Belfair, a new roof at Belfair. In addition, we have done improvements to security at both schools with the little camera entrance things that we're putting in all the buildings. And we also built a brand new home for James Taylor. We built a brand new high school and, of course, the middle school. So now what we have left to complete is part of the middle school project is completing the parking plaza area out here. That's how we bid it out. So that is already, as I stated earlier, that's already been encumbered. And that project, as you can see, the fence is up, is starting on the 25th. Once the sale of surplus materials is done and the SWAT team from the Sheriff's Department does a practice day in the building.
Oh, cool.
And so then we'll be done with that project. Well, really what we have left is completing the stadium project. So did I?
Yeah, actually, what I was
Missed that?
really trying to get from you, and
Okay.
thanks for that, that history is worthwhile anyway, is, did you consider, and how
Yes.
did you consider, like, going for another bond, going for a capital
Yeah.
levy, going for
So
other
we
alternatives?
looked at, as we're coming down there to the end, and the money being tight, there are different things we could do. We could have come to the board and said, okay, well, here's where we're at, and we recommend that we don't build a stadium at all, that we wait or immediately go out for a new bond at some point in the not too distant future. We are probably going to be recommending that in the next several years, because we will need to be looking at replacement of Belfair Elementary School. But we might come in and say we need to wait on the stadium until we get ready to do that issuance and do those things together. That would be one choice. Or to do just a smaller project and do a new issuance for a stadium project. We could also look at not doing anything at all. And then we could look at this option. And I think we talked individually with board members. We talked with our facilities advisory committee that was very influential in the work as you developed a plan for the bond, and really felt that the thing that was right to complete the expectations of the community would be to find a way to make sure we did finish with a stadium project, and that this was a way that would do that most efficiently as far as time and in a way that felt right to the community. Because although anybody can understand that costs change, it would still feel better to not do a second bond when they, as an entity, understood that was going to be part of the initial project. So that's why we came up with.
Okay. Well,
We did some research.
Thank you for that. That was kind of what I was trying to get
Okay.
to understand. Wanted to be sure also that you had considered all these other alternatives. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you on how it turned out.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on that, since Art and I and Laura have, been the longest service, I remember when we were arguing for the bond, part of the vision was, we will, in addition to all these other things we need, we will be able to have our graduation at home. And that was a big selling point, because I think that will, in addition to the buildings, or along with the buildings, that actually completes the vision that we brought to the people and the people approved of. And it would leave a different feel with our community and in the rhythm of our school life. For North Mason seniors to be able to graduate here at home, and for us to have a facility adequate to the parking that would be necessary to do that.
Well, and I do want to point out that is a big part of why you sold the stadium, as I understand.
Yeah.
I wasn't here. However, I do want to point out that once we have the completed parking, in addition to all the other parking we already have, we have the seating in the new gymnasium and auxiliary gym together to be able to house an indoor graduation for at home as well, not necessarily having to be outdoor in the stadium. I just want,
And
we do have that.
however, if we grow enough, then we'll have that capacity in the stadium as well, because
Yes.
that will be larger than the indoor part.
Yeah, I was really thinking of both, because we couldn't have it indoors unless we had, the parking
Right.
facility. And I think for the rhythm of things.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you guys. If any of you want to examine school boards, you can find my number on the web, and I'm sure many of my colleagues would be happy to talk about this level of government.
I'd like to call for the question.
All right, there's a call for the question. So the issue is whether to whether we will, Resolution 01G17, the issuance by the district of a limited general obligation bond. And just so there's no mistake, indulge me while I read the whole thing. The district is proposing to the community the issuance of bonds in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $4 million. These will be payable over a period of 15 years, with the final payment to occur on December 1st, 2031. The bond proceeds will be used to pay costs of capital improvements, renovations, and modernization to facilities of the district and related costs and costs of issuance pursuant to RCW 28A.530.010, parens 4, period. The bonds will be general obligation of the district payable from all legally available district funds. So, we've had a motion, we've had a call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The measure passed. Now we are on to our next item. Looks like the number 5 North Mason Soccer Football Field renovation project.
Right. Well, in 2013, just prior to the issuance and approval of the bond, the school district entered into a memorandum of understanding with Mason County on a grant application from the state that Mason County wanted to submit that would be create a partnership between the district and the county to do some renovation on the existing football field and then allow that to be developed as a football, soccer, and what's the other game with the lacrosse? Thank you, field, and that was granted finally in late 2015 when the county got the information back. So this MOU is bringing those dollars into our stadium projects and laying the rules of how we'll work that partnership together. And so it will bring about just under $500,000 towards the work that we're doing and give us the opportunity to support athletics throughout the community, not just during our school events, but also partner and provide the opportunity for other activities to take place. And the key component of how that will work is we will, for the scheduling of the use of our field, we will have a committee that works on that scheduling, and the county will be able to appoint one member to the committee to help determine who gets to use the field outside of when the school is using it and when.
Will the county then share in the maintenance of that facility?
The county's fiscal responsibility was in getting the grant money.
Okay. Then my other question is, does this also include the softball field? And
No,
the
this
baseball
is
field?
just the stadium field.
Oh, so are there any plans for the softball field or the baseball field?
We're working on some things that we're going to be talking with the facilities committee, but not related to this at this time.
Okay.
But we're working on some things as a district that we'll be talking with the facilities committee and then bringing to the board to consider and talk about soon.
So this concerns basically the present stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things I like about this, I think it is a good idea when we're able to do so with safety to the kids, to have times when the community has reason to come up here and to see our facilities and to make use of these things. I think it makes for a good relation between community and the school, in addition to serving our primary function of education, in which sports is an important part of that. So I would be open at this time for a motion to accept or not the North Mason Soccer Football Field renovation project. Would anyone like to move that?
I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding with Mason County.
All right, is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. All right, we are now to development and linkage and our superintendent update.
Well, I've covered a lot of things already tonight with recognizing the board. We've discussed capital projects to the degree
Yes.
that we need to. I am going to just highlight a couple of things really quickly and then have Kathy do the finance reports. But we did get notification from ESD 113, which, as you know, is not the ESD that we normally participate in, but is the group that provides driver's education for us. Prior to the start of the school year, there was an increase in costs that our fall students saw. As of January 1st, there is an additional increase of costs for the driver's ed course. It is still much less than the combined cost of our course, and then paying for your final driving test is still much less than what you would pay to go to a private provider. So we are going to continue with this. Questions will remain if we get an additional cost in the summer, because the communication that we received from ESD 113 seemed to indicate that they see a spiraling increase in costs related to providing this service. So we may not continually have this service, but I did want to bring to your attention, in case it's something that you get questions about, that yes, the costs have gone up again and in the middle of the year. And so that was basically what that was about. Also, in the board packet, I wanted to really emphasize that the Regional High School Art Show is coming up, that it happens at our ESD, that we have students every year who do very well and present their items there, and want to encourage board members to try to get it on your schedules. The awards and reception are Monday, March 6th at 7 p.m. And the art is on display at beginning with an open house on Monday, February 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. So if you could attend either of those opportunities and see the work from kids around the region, I highly encourage you and anyone in the community to do so. So having done those, I am going to turn over the rest of our update to budget status reports.
I think I can probably not use this. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you. Good evening and happy school board month. Yay. So you've had the opportunity to review the budget status. It's the same financial status that I put on there. And I'll just do a brief overview for you to just kind of go over some highlights. So right now, our general fund, our revenues are higher than our budget, and our expenditures are a little higher than our budget. So they kind of go hand in hand, but they're very, very close to being even. You saw there's a graph. Some of you I know are visual and you like to look at the graph. So that just shows on the graph what is written out on the first page. With our fund balance, this is where we can talk a little bit about with the loan and what the fund balance has been doing. And we are actually right now sitting at about a $2 million fund balance this month. We did collect our taxes in October, so that does kind of spike it up, and then it'll go down a little and we'll get taxes again in March. So it kind of, it does vary a little bit. If you noticed on the board report, I have a 3-year average of what the months typically do. So the 3-year average, which does not include 16-17, it's 13-14 school year through 15-16 school year, was running about 1.4 million. So we're at $2 million. So you can see that we're doing quite a bit better than we had been in the previous 3 years. So that's a good sign, and that was some of our decisions when we talked about some of this non-voted debt as well. We have some other funds that we are working as well. We have our capital projects fund. Right now, we have about, I'm sorry, at the end of December, we had about 1.9 million left in our capital projects fund. We got all of that bond money up front. So right now, the only money that is coming in revenue is we get some interest on some of the money that sits in the bank, and we are getting some Great View payments. We got a Great View payment in December, and we get our state match. We still have about $4 million that we'll spend and get back in state match for the demolition of Hawkins. And as the superintendent said, that's the encumbered part that we had already planned on.
Kathy, if I might, remind me of how much comes in from Grapeview?
We get $325,000 twice a year. So we've collected about half of that. We have about 4 more payments. And it's actually the very end of 2018 or the very beginning of 2019 is when the last payment will come in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Our debt service, we just had some payments for our bonds. We pay those twice a year as well. And that fund balances have gone down to about 1.1 million. ASB is looking at about $285,000 in their fund balance. And then transportation is still $312,000. And the funny thing is I looked at that and I thought, we just got the bus. And I think that we had talked about that we finally received the bus. But the bill is just in to be paid this month. So next month you'll see that that's gone down. And this is also the fund where our last payment for our, that we talked about, the debt for the school buses will come out of that. So that will be at a kind of a zero balance once that's paid. And the only thing that goes in there is depreciation that the state pays us yearly or annually on our school buses, the yellow school buses. So hopefully we can get that a little bigger and we can go ahead and get some more school buses in a replacement cycle. The good news is our enrollment. So I know that I've put a chart on there and I've put some annualized average FTE. So I like to put that on there, or I just started adding that. And again, I talked about that several times, that when we're actually funded, we're funded on budget. So we're funded on the budget that we put out in July that we're putting out for the school year. And the state will then take in January, which is right now with our student count, and they'll say, this is where you're at, we're going to average everything out, and then we're going to pay you based on what your actual numbers are at that point. So we're actually into the actual number. Our annualized average right now is about 2,134. This is as of January count, and our budget is 2,100 or 2,109. So we're up about 30 kids, and it's awesome. It's more than we expected. We've been just growing. I talk every month to the superintendent about projecting enrollment, because all the numbers that we see, and I know I've said this before, just show that we're going down, or supposed to be going down, and we're just going up. So that's also great news for the non-voted debt that you just approved. That as long as our enrollment is going up, we're doing great. And I also looked back, and I looked at last year at this point in time. Our annualized average was about 2,109 students, and now it's 2,134 students. And they did not come in kindergarten. So they all came to the middle school, and we got some in elementary, but that's pretty much stayed flat. They've all come to the new schools. That's where we're seeing all the enrollment increase.
Both?
Yes.
The Hawkins and the...
Yep. And we predicted that a little bit, that because of the spike for the high school, there could be some students that are maybe making some choices to choice out of their local residents and come to the new school. So it'll be interesting once we have 2 brand new schools starting the school year next year to see where the enrollment will come in. And we've the superintendent and I have already started planning for those numbers. Do you have any questions about the finances or anything?
I just wanted to make sure I've got that right. Did they come Did some of the new ones come to the new Hawkins? They're just coming in January, or had they already come over in the fall?
Well, the new Hawkins has just increased a little bit. Most of it is to the high school right
Uh-huh.
now. But we predict there will be some increase, some more, maybe a steady increase in the middle school. The high school is a little unique because we are a serving district for several non-high districts.
Mhm.
So when you have so many outlying districts that don't have high schools, and when they actually have a choice of where to go, if they're gonna go here, they might as well just go a little farther and go to that brand new school. I
Mhm.
think that's what we're finding. And that's just my prediction. There's no other reason for the
Mhm.
increase. It's just everything that I read says it shouldn't be happening. So it's great, whatever it is. So.
Although we do continue to see a very strong increase in newcomers to our country enrolling in, particularly at the secondary level.
Oh,
I noticed some recently a lot of different families moving either back to Belfair or moving here for the first time. And it's not something that I was normally seeing, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but that I was seeing before is like just a big amount of people coming. But I've noticed that it's been popping up, like different families that are, I'm moving back, and a few of them are special needs kids. So that's it's pretty cool.
Have any of our new enrollment students come from South Kitsap?
I don't know that.
At-
I'll
at-
look into that.
I do, actually. At the
Okay.
beginning of the school year, we had a number of high school students from South Kitsap, particularly the day before school started, we had 5 new high school students from South Kitsap and additional over the summer as well. So yes, that is
Okay.
happening.
Very cool.
It's also nice too when they get a little older and they can drive themselves to school,
Right.
so then they
Yeah.
can choose, have more choices.
I love that they're coming here. I just hope South Kitsap gets a new school like we did. They need it so bad. But I'm glad they're here.
Any more questions that I can help with?
okay. Thank you very
Okay,
much,
thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at Community Linkage Planning and Message of the Month, and we already have the meetings, upcoming meetings are, for different organizations, are all listed in appropriate place, so I trust there's nothing more to be said there. Which brings us also to upcoming North Mason columnists. And so we have for February, Dinah, and March, Art, and for April, we have our joint board letter. So that just kind of gives us a heads up. Which brings us to assurance of organizational performance and policy review. And the policies we are reviewing for this evening are ER 8, Communication and Counsel to the Board, and ER 5, Budget Execution. So, are there some comments on these?
Well, we always have a great review for your communication with us. It's always wonderful. So you're still doing a great job. And the ice and the snow, that people have been just freaking out about all these, about the roads out there. And you're out there, you're not just getting to the community where they are on the Facebook and everything, but you get online and you would call us if you needed to, but you email us and we see it, and we have so much information. It's so great. I'm never in the dark. And being vice president now, I feel a little bit more involved in one-on-one with you, so it's good information all the time.
And I'm assuming these were reviewed and found
That's
in
right.
compliance in December.
Right.
Yes.
And I think we've more or less reviewed both of them in the course of our meeting.
Yeah.
Because everything we've done, the setting of the way in which this internal debt was presented to us, I think is an example of good communication, counsel to the board, and also the items that have been said this meeting and so many others on budget execution, and we pretty well went through this evening some of our expectations, which are also in writing. So is there anything more that needs to be said on that one?
Well, not that one, the budget executions. Are we doing?
Okay, let's talk about budget execution.
Well, I just think we just get such a great overview of everything that's another one of the information things that you're doing just a great job and showing us, everything visually and telling us. So I've been really happy with it. I'm always I get kind of stupid about things. I'm like, if I didn't have a visual or people that spoke with visual words, that I would be completely lost. So you guys are doing a great job.
Well, I think it is very good to have two very high-powered people who, among others, to whom one can go for hard questions and expect prompt and detailed answers. And I think we've found that certainly with our budget and in so many other areas as well.
Yeah, and I should have said Kathy. I said you, and then I'm on the tape. Like nobody knows what I'm talking about. I'm just pointing out to some chairs. Yeah.
The camera pans.
Yeah.
All right, we are at item 7, assurance of organizational. Well, we just did that. Wake up. Okay, put my mouse and the finger down, which means that we're down to 8. See how reluctant I am to leave this company. So we are announcements, comments and announcements. So this is an opportunity for anyone in the public, including some of our visitors, to make any comment that they would like to do. We value the opinion and input of the community, and this time is an opportunity for the public to offer comments on issues, whether or not they are on the agenda, on matters of day-to-day operation of the district as policy, curriculum, academic standards, and things of that character. The public is invited and encouraged to meet with the superintendent. So, does anyone have some observations they would like to share?
You have one.
Got one.
Okay.
Ken.
Yeah.
Ken, I'm sorry.
Thank you, John. Just a couple things, observations. The item 5, the memorandum of understanding that you just approved, I didn't notice an expiration date on that MOU. I think that might be something to explore, especially since those RCO grants have long-term obligations, as you know. And Director Bode brought up an interesting point about maintenance. That's always one of those long-term obligations that needs to be defined and spelled out. Along that line, a year ago tomorrow, you had a public forum about Feller. And you were all there, so I don't think I have to remind you what transpired. But I was really happy that you didn't decide to burn down the Feller building. I think it's a win-win. But there were a lot of other suggestions that were brought forward as a result of that meeting. And the community, at least I haven't really been aware of anything other than just the Feller building. So I'm hoping that that conversation will continue. There's some issues that still have not been resolved. Lastly, I couldn't attend last month, but I appreciate that you considered that alternative route resolution. And I understand that you couldn't reach consensus about it, and that's fine. But you just heard this evening how important it is for our bond rating for the infrastructure and how important that is to that. Well, Mason County just hired a consultant for $250,000 to develop a Belfair urban growth area transportation plan. And that includes possible bypass connectors and also some additional roads. And I think it's very important that you as school board members, the school's transportation department, and other folks be involved in that undertaking and not let some consultant decide what our community is going to be in terms of it. Our transportation department knows the roads and the needs better than anybody. So I just would encourage you to check that out. It's forthcoming in the next couple of months. They're going to start in another project, and it's supposed to be involve public input, and I think the school should be at the table about that. So thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ken. So this brings us to announcements and we did the announcements, comment, and when the board and superintendent. I think this was the time I was going to mention a few things, and I don't know as we have to vote on them this evening, unless you want to, but there's some matters concerning our legislative policy that I wanted, our relationship to the WASDA legislative policy that I wanted to bring to your attention. The first is, for the last several years, you folks have been so trusting in me that when it comes to voting on the top 10, I have chosen for you the top 10 items that I think should be our leading items to put before WASDA if we were going to make our judgment. It seems to me that we're not there are other school districts that do that. I would like to open the possibility, in fact, I would recommend that this board take a time to take a look at the WASDA legislative recommendations and decide on our own. In chatting with Superintendent Rosenbach on this, maybe we could have a study session. I mean, there's 100 and some items. It's, of course, difficult to know them all, but one does have brief descriptions. And whether we could agree on them or not, if I were to be able to take to the, or whoever succeeds me in this office, we're able to take to the regional conference in September, when as legislative rep, we vote on that, then I would feel more that I was acting with your knowledge and consent and simply not acting on my own.
Do you want to have more than one study session, or are you just talking
Well,
about one?
if we have one and we find we need more, it's possible we might be able to do it in one. I hadn't really given any thought.
Well,
to
and
that.
they really start crafting things later in the year, so these would be study sessions we'd probably schedule in the late spring or during the summer, so that it's in response to whatever happens this year's legislative session as WASDA looks ahead to the following year. So I think it's a very good idea and something that John wanted to make sure you all were thinking about, so when we talk about it later, it's not a new thought. And
I have no problem with having such sessions, and as president, and I would encourage you to maybe set some up.
Okay, well, I
with
just,
the superintendent.
Do we
I
have
don't
to
need a
make a
formal
motion
vote,
or-
but I
No,
wanted, I wanted to get your disposition on that, because in talking with the other representatives, there was a sense of guilty conscience on those that do exercise this liberty on their own, and I would much prefer to consult with you folks on looking at the whole state shebang. If you were to put the top 10, what would they be? And it would be,
And I think too that we could have that homework done in advance
yeah,
of the study session, so we're not poring over
right,
100 items.
right, all at
Yeah.
once. Well, I
And
will,
I'm all in agreement to do that, and I would be happy to even go to that. I wouldn't mind being our legislative rep, so that you get to vote there as part of the committee, is that correct?
Well, no, the way it works is I vote on our decisions about what goes on the agenda. For instance, we did a.
So then do you
for-
vote then
for the
on
state.
behalf of us?
I vote in helping set the agenda that then, as the legislative rep, you would be, and others from the state, would be voting on in conference.
So at the way it is currently,
Yeah.
you then vote on those items as our representative?
At present, yes.
Okay, all right.
But I would be
then
more
I'm
than
fine with
happy to have you move into that position if you so like.
that. No, I'm good with you voting. I just wanted to make sure if we could get 2 votes, I'd do it.
Well,
But otherwise,
this is
it's
an
fine. But
area
I'm
where.
all for the special session so that we can educate ourselves about those
Okay,
issues.
good. The other thing that was really brought to mind, this has been simmering in my mind for some time, but it came to a head during this weekend that we had a couple of weeks ago with all the legislative delegates. Our concern for our kids is really on 2 levels. We've been paying, 2 levels with respect to our concern with local engagement with government. I think we've been pretty active on the local level, thanks to Dana and many of you as well. I think both our representatives and our senator know what we want. And we have been to see them personally, we talk with them, we communicate with them in many ways, and I think, they're very much on board. We have not been attentive to what's happening at a national level. And one of the things I was persuaded of at this last meeting is that our legislators do not necessarily know what's going on with respect to educational issues at a national level. And I think it was Mary Furtakas, a previous president of WASDA, who's now very active in FERN, Federal
Relations Network.
Relations Network, and there's an education component in there, was sharing with us on her trips to Washington. Our group is the only group, the state of Washington, who regularly makes appointments with the Department of Education. The others, see senators and representatives. And sometimes in the course of that, one learns particularities about how bills operate or how the government counts. And when the government counts on a certain thing and money is connected with that, if they count differently than the state counts, our legislators, who may be crafting legislation on the assumption that it works the way the state does, may actually craft something that works against our best interests. So for that reason, staying at the cutting edge of what's happening and having binocular vision, an ability to understand what's going on the state level, we certainly owe that to our kids, and an equal ability to understand what's going on a national level, I think puts us in the most strong position of leverage, both particularly at the state. We would be able to tell a legislator, as Mary Furtakas and others have done, you don't understand this, with the best will and in the most diplomatic way in the world. I hadn't seen that because I was focused so much on what we're doing locally. This just seemed something else. But I really am very serious about this now. I would like one of the legacies of our board to pass on to our successors a habit of binocular vision when it comes to the interests of our students, to be aware of one thing at the national level, to be aware of what's going on at the national level and at the regional level with respect to education legislation. Now this, I don't think necessarily would involve much expense. Some go to Washington, D.C. That would be something to consider some year. I'm not seeing that immediately. We would be, as a member of FERN, we would get special it would be very much like WASDA. When I go home, my box will have a number of legislation notices from WASDA. I'm in a position to be well informed, as are all of us, just watching their website on important pieces of educational legislation appearing locally. We would then have, as a member of Fern, something of the same access, and we would be part also of the informal conversations that go on among Fern members. And then we would be able to be lobbyists, not only at Olympia, but go down to Bremerton and talk to, the local representatives of our legislature and make clear, our concerns and things that we would like. So I would think this would be a good idea. Now,
Are you still trying to convince us? Because we're already
Okay,
for
well,
it.
I think
Yeah.
you've sold them all, John.
Okay,
so
Yeah,
all
we're
right.
good.
sold
Forget
us,
it.
yeah.
all right.
We can include a membership in the consent agenda next month, and you can all discuss it
that
at
would be
that
fun.
point.
We'll vote on that. For those out there in the public, I hope you understand why this is an important issue. I think those are the main things that occurred to me. And I think I've talked enough. I'm sorry.
Yep, I have nothing else
found that. No, I'm
to
good.
bring
I
up.
don't have anything else either.
I had you guys came, Boy Scouts, right? And are you getting a sign off or an actual just coming here to do this, or?
Well, this is part of their sign off.
Oh,
We
okay.
have to have a discussion afterwards at another meeting.
And what does it go towards?
Communication merit badge.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, this is a good place to be, good place to, if you guys wanted to know more about it, but just a little small quick thing is it's a good way to get information more about your school, be involved, and be able to work with the community and not just be a voice but a big ear for people to talk to you, so it's kind of cool. But I'm
And
glad
just
you guys
in
came.
case you didn't know, Dr. Campbell has a doctorate in communication. He would be a wealth of information for you.
He is.
I appreciate my colleagues volunteering me for various things. A doctorate in communication means you're very gullible and open to persuasion. So, anyway, I appreciate those messages. I would simply add myself, if there's something you'd like to know about our board operation, I'm sure my colleagues would be more than happy, but more than open for an interview, as I would myself. There are a lot
When
of,
John speaks, he paints a picture with his animated words.
Well.
So, I mean, not that I wouldn't answer any of your questions, but he has a way of crafting amazing things.
I'm a man with a target on my back, and the
Oh,
less I
no.
see, the better.
John,
Yes,
you have
Okay,
to
we're
assign
now-
that to someone else. Dinah's not here.
yes, okay. We're now at the board self-assessment of meeting. Do I have some volunteer?
Art just volunteered.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear
I
that.
actually had
He wasn't saying
a
anything.
quick thought.
Okay,
I had a quick thought regarding this. I brought up a meeting or two ago that, perhaps we could have our student board representatives do
Yes.
this. I'm wondering, is this something you'd be interested in this time?
Yes, I can do that.
You would?
well, that is a great idea.
I was hoping you'd forget.
Grab his pen
Can I
and
use your
read
pen?
that.
Absolutely.
Do I just read through?
Just read through and say which box you
Be
would-
brutal, Megan.
grade you would
Be
give.
brutal.
The agenda.
The agenda was well planned to focus on the real work of the board. I would find that satisfactory. The board followed its agenda and did not allow itself to get sidetracked, and you guys did a really good job at that for the most part today. So satisfactory. Board members prepared for and contributed to the meeting, and as you always do, satisfactory. The meeting proceeded without interruptions or distraction. That was definitely satisfactory. The board's deliberations and decision-making process were public. Yes, they were satisfactory. Participation was balanced, all balanced and no one dominated. That was satisfactory. Members listened attentively, avoiding side conversations, and that was actually better today than normal. So it was satisfactory. Were work was conducted in an atmosphere of trust and openness, satisfactory. Meeting participants treated each other with respect and courtesy, definitely satisfactory. What do I do with this part?
So now this, we didn't review principals, any new ones today, so.
Should I just hit no?
So what would she do, because we didn't have any,
Skip it.
skip it,
NA.
so we can just skip that part.
But there's no
So
new
give
box.
yourselves an overall grade.
Overall, I find the boards satisfactory.
I like the way she paused there. That was-
I was trying to figure out what to say.
She wanted to give us a really good one, but there's
That's
no
right.
box for
That's
that.
Okay, our next board meeting date will be February 16th at 6 PM, right here. And before
6:30. 6:30, John.
what did I say?
6.
6.
Oh, I'm glad that someone listens to what I say.
Well, you've been really
Obviously, I
late if it was 6
don't.
o'clock today. Yeah.
6:30 in a month, February 16th. And before I adjourn, I wanted just to point out that the board will be adjourning for approximately a 20-minute period to evaluate the superintendent's performance mid-year. No action is expected as a result of this session. Part of state law requires that those things that are discussed behind closed doors be given a time, and that no policy can be discussed, in that room, policy decision made in that room in keeping with our Public Meetings Act. So I will be returning. You guys can go unless you're really interested in us probably coming out and hearing no action taken. So we will be adjourning for a 20-minute period before I officially call the meeting to a close after those deliberations.
Okay.
So we either move or they do.
No,
We went.
we shouldn't.
Okay.